Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in a few minutes. It's a bit early, so we want to give people time to join.
I feel like we need music. Is that just me? Like, I feel like whenever there's like a silent pause, like I always feel the need for like some music or something to like fill that space.
What do we want to listen to for the next 3 minutes?
Jeopardy theme song.
I think that would get a little repetitive.
Do USQ have a theme song? Can we make a theme song?
We don't currently.
Thank you to everyone who's joined so far. We are still just giving a few minutes, especially keeping in mind that some attendees are joining from different time zones, and we'll be starting at 10:05.
How's everyone's day going? Has anyone had a chance to have breakfast yet? Panelists and attendees?
I had a banana.
Banana.
Strong cup of coffee.
Good for potassium. You know, Izzy, that is perfectly acceptable.
I had a bagel and some applesauce and some almonds.
Liz also had a bagel. So that's
Nice time.
I had waffles.
Jeremy, I think the attendee rate is tapering off now, so we can go ahead and get started with our welcome.
Sure. Yep, we're only a minute early. Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to this USQ AMA Ask Me Anything panel. We are so excited to have all of you. We had sent some forms out and tried to gather some questions. We also have some questions that we'll be answering that were prepared in advance, and you can ask your own questions during this panel. We're really excited to have you here. Over the last few months, USQ has gone through some organizational changes where we've promoted different volunteers to members of management and team leadership. The folks on this call make up some of the team leads of USQ. So these are some of the best people that are going to be able to answer your questions about what USQ is working on, as well as how we can best help you. One thing to keep in mind is that we will be using the Q&A feature of this webinar. If you haven't used the Q&A feature yet in another panel, super simple. You can go to the bottom of your screen if you're on your PC or Mac, or if you're on mobile, you can go to the Zoom menu and you can select Q&A. From there, you can type a question in. We won't only just be looking at the typed questions, but as well, you can vote on them. So if you see a question that you really like, give it an upvote. We're going to prioritize the questions in terms of upvote, and we'll take it from there. We'll both be answering questions live via audio, as well as typing some responses to them. Some of the typed responses may be, that's a really awesome question, but let's take it offline because it's really niche to you. But every single question asked here will be answered in one way or another. I think with that, we can get started with some introductions. So I'll hand it over to Christian if he wants to introduce himself.
Okay. My name is Christian Barnes. I am the Gameplay Department Manager for USQ.
My name is Jared Bailey. I'm the Snitch Team Lead in the Gameplay Department for USQ.
My name is Jeremy Schleicher. I am the Internal Events Manager for USQ.
I'm Lexi Vidal.
My name is
Sorry.
Go ahead, Lexi.
It's all good. I'm Lexi Vidal, and I'm the Youth Team Lead for USQ.
My name is Miles Travis, and I'm the Ref Team Lead for USQ within the Gameplay Department.
I'm Michael O'Connor. I'm the live stream team lead.
I'm Megan Anderson. I am the Strategic Planning Manager.
I'm Mariana. I'm the Member Relations Team Lead in the Member Services Department.
I'm Sarah Nealing. I am the gameplay team lead, and I also work in the rules team.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll do a brief pause here and give a second if anyone wants to ask any questions in the Q&A. And then we do have some questions that were asked in advance of this panel, and we'll get started with those. I think the first one will really go off of the introduction that we just gave, and it really just asks, what is the most important project in your opinion that your team is working on for next year? And we'll start this off with Megan Anderson.
Yeah, so my role is involved in a couple of different teams, but one of the top priorities that come to mind to me is making sure that teams feel supported and that they have all the resources needed in order to launch into the 21-22 season. So that's one of my top priorities across all departments currently, is getting that prep work done.
Thank you for that. Next, we'll go to Jeremy Schleicher.
Thanks, Christian. So the events department has been working on a lot of different virtual initiatives. We do have the Among Us coming up soon. Please sign up if you're interested. But something we're really excited about is we are once again beginning the bidding process for new regionals and nationals event locations. This is something that we're working very closely with DEI to ensure that our events for the 2022 and 2023 seasons are in safe, inclusive, and engaging places for our players.
Thank you. Jared, can you give us some more information about what your team is working on?
Yeah, sure, Christian. Thank you. We're working on expanding the resources to increase the number of snitches for next year, as well as the quality of their care. We're including educational materials to improve their performance, and we're overall going towards a future where there's going to be more and stronger snitches to help out the rest of our community.
Thank you. Next, let's move over to Lexi.
Hi, we're working on some virtual outreach programs for teachers and educational resources and that expansion.
Thanks. Michael, we're going to move over to you next.
All right. So on the live stream team, we're working on the commentator program and how we can hear more voices that reflect our community as Quidditch players.
Thanks for that. Miles, can you talk to us about Ref Team?
Yes, thank you, Christian. So with Ref Team, the biggest thing that we're working on right now is a complete revamp and redo of the certification process, including the ref tests and field tests and all of that kind of thing.
Thanks. We'll move to Rihanna, member relations.
Thank you. I think the biggest thing we're working on in member relations in conjunction with member services as a whole is really just streamlining the membership process to not only make it more cohesive on our end, but also on players and teams' ends. That'll make it a lot easier and easy to understand and to get things done, to make sure we have those resources for teams, especially going into 21-22.
Thanks. And finally, Sarah, can you give us a little bit about gameplay and rules?
Yeah, I'd say the most important thing for next season that gameplay is working on is just making sure we set a structure that supports teams returning to play safely across the country. And also for rules, we're kind of evaluating how to, we changed a lot of rules right before the start of what would have been this last season. So we're trying to make sure that we are able to properly explain those rules to players so that a return to play is smooth, and also just evaluate what we can and should test and change for the future.
Thanks. Our second question that was asked in advance is going to go right back to you, Sarah, but how do you decide how a rule gets made?
Yeah, so what we do is we try to keep a watch on as many games as possible, on as many levels as possible of play, and try to get input from players, from refs, from watching games, and see like what aspect of this game could or should be tweaked. There's a lot of times too where we know right away that a rule is a problem and we need to come up with a solution to it, but there's also times where we know that it's going to be kind of a longer term process because it's kind of a very small mechanic that we're going to need to evaluate, and we don't want to put something into place that will just make things worse. We don't want to put something into place until we know that it will be good.
Thank you very much. Our next question asks, how do you decide who goes to nationals? And first I'll give this over to the events manager, Jeremy.
Yeah, so definitely something that we're going to keep in mind is the facility itself. So like I mentioned before, we try to pick really high quality facilities that are safe and engaging, but this also means there is a size cap to them. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the competitive rigor accessible and competitive, while also we're not flooding the place with thousands and thousands and thousands of players. So trying to keep in mind the number of fields, how many pitches we're able to fit on those fields, as well as local accommodations, all gets factored in.
Thanks. I also want to move it over to Megan. I know that RCs are important to this process. What's the sort of timeline that they try to use to help teams get to national?
Yeah, so thinking to whatever the structure of the season may be, and whether teams in their region fall under competing at fall regionals or spring regionals, or whatever they might be going to in order to qualify, RCs do take a lead role in ensuring that teams who are wanting to go to nationals are kind of meeting the qualifications leading up to that. So there's a lot of conversations, either, direct messages, email, whatever works for that RC team relationship that they found. And RCs also make it a point to be an open door. So, as teams prep for whatever journey they want to go on for the season, and if nationals is in the picture for them, they're able to know who their RC is and be able to have them as a resource throughout the season for any questions they have.
Thank you for that. I think that's especially helpful since we do have some attendees that are not from the US. And outside of the US, I think that understanding the important role of RCs and informing teams across the season is not standardized. So the next one is, what will USQ be doing to help the declining membership and teams caused by COVID? And I'd like to start this one with Rihanna.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a few different plans in place for different events that are in the works. But also we've kind of inside of our volunteer staff restructuring, we've expanded the member services department to include different teams that will better help teams. So as I'm member relations, I handle we're going to be handling the membership inbox and all of that, but we also have our leadership development, athlete development that will be great resources to kind of push through those training things for new leadership, because we're going to be seeing teams with new leadership that haven't transitioned, as well as just new players in general who haven't played before with the decline of membership, as well as trying to get incentives for membership and things that are in the works.
Thank you for that. I think that something else that's really important with the membership is, what is the importance that USQ sees for teams in a season? And part of that is the product that most teams receive from USQ, which are the events. So leading into our next question, what are the top 3 priorities when running a USQ hosted event by the people that are actually in HQ? I'll throw this one over to Jeremy.
Yeah. Our number one priority is always, our number one priority is going to be player safety. Not a super big thing we can control in HQ, but something that I really focus on is game efficiency, trying to take a look at what games are running over, what games are on that field after that game, how can we try to move the schedule along a little more. As I'm sure everyone on the line knows, Quidditch tournaments don't exactly end at the time they're always scheduled to. This is a byproduct of our games don't have a set length, and weather is a thing. So we really try to just keep in mind, what is the domino effect of a delay at 8 a.m.? How is that going to affect 5 p.m.?
Awesome. I know that a lot of players on the ground don't actually see that. And if you ask some players, they might say something like, I care a lot about who's going to be officiating my game. So Jared first, and then Miles, can you talk a little bit about how that works on the planning side?
Yeah, sure. So something that we're going to be experimenting with or implementing next year is the new tier system for snitches. That's going to be ranking tiers 1 through 5 for snitches based on their physical abilities after they submit film to snitch team or get reviewed by a snitch proctor. This is going to be really helpful in answering some of those issues that we've had in the past of maybe the snitches level of quality is not aligned to the level of game competition. So this is hopefully going to increase the competitiveness of the game, and it's going to also help improve overall the abilities of snitches across the field. By pairing that with an increased presence for snitches at USQ hosted events, we're looking in the future to just have a more streamlined process for assigning snitches and having that feedback loop for making sure that we have enough snitches to cover games for the rest of the day and the following day. And of course, making sure that their caliber is up to the level of the game.
And then for referees, this is something that we are still currently working on. So there's not a system that has been set. It's a project that we're working on currently, so hopefully can be finished soon. But in regards to recertification and those kinds of things, we are looking at a way to make it a little bit easier and less cumbersome for people like returning head refs and things along those lines, to not have to go through the rigor that is the 4 tests and the field tests and all those other kinds of things. So be on the lookout for some more information on that. Hopefully y'all really like it.
Awesome, thanks for that. I know that it's something that people are thinking about, especially with having a year of everyone not playing Quidditch. So I know I am also excited to see what's coming down the line. One question that many collegiate players especially are thinking of as they start planning for budgetary processes for next year is, will dues be changing again next year? Rihanna or Megan, do either of you want to take this one?
I can take that if that's okay. So we've looked at projections for next season already, and we are not planning to change the membership dues amount. So the numbers that were set for the 21-22 season, especially since we were not able to fully, test this new pricing structure that we had in place, and it seemed like there was a lot of favor for it. So we're going to keep it exactly the same for the 21-22 season.
Thanks. Something else that I wanted to ask a little bit about, because we have gotten some questions, and this is, with the current financial status of USQ, how have you been able to start being able to provide grants to teams? Many people have seen that there is a current grant that you can apply for, a few grants that you can apply for, which, just to note, you can reach out to your RC if you're having some difficulty in working on that application. I would like to throw this one to Mary.
Yeah, hi y'all. I'm Mary Kimball, USQ's Executive Director, just hopping in for this question about finances. So when the Board of Directors and I were working on the budget for this part of the season, we factored in grants as a big part of what we were going to be allocating some funds to, because we think that helping teams in this way by providing them with a bit of financial assistance as they make their plans for returning to play next season, that was really, really important. So that's part of it, is that we just made space for it and ensured that it was a priority. There's also been some other positive changes happening with our finances, some of which we'll go over later this month when we release our second quarter financial statements, like some federal funding programs that we've had some success with, as well as some small fundraisers that are happening at the Board of Directors level. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about this and some other things at the State of the Quidditch keynote address, but I'm going to mute now so I can empower more of our amazing volunteers to speak, because we have made so many changes over the last year, and one of the most positive ones has been giving volunteers additional opportunities to have leadership positions in the organization. So Christian, I give the floor back to you.
Awesome. So we've talked a lot about like what the next season might look like for people who are already in the league, but what if there's someone outside of it? How can an individual start up a team if they want one in their area? Megan, Rihanna, I'll throw this one to you. Rihanna, you can go first. I'm sorry.
Okay. Never know who's gonna go first. There's a couple different ways to go about starting a new team in your area. I think a good first resource, if you're completely new to the sport, you've found our website, and just kind of are overwhelmed by the massive information, is to go and email our membership at inbox with, I want to start a team. This is where I live. How do I do this? And then at that point, myself, Mary, Megan, people who have access to that inbox will respond to you. And depending on your area, we can connect you with your RCs of that area, and they will be able to help with, where can I practice? Am I a collegiate or a club? That type of thing. And then we can point you towards resources, maybe some grants if we need support that way, leadership resources, safety resources. And then for officials, we can disseminate that information out to rules, to snitch team, to ref team. So membership's a really good place to start. Even if you're a team that doesn't think they're going to go official at the start, even if you're not official, we are here for teams. We don't care if you're going to regionals and nationals. We just want Quidditch to be this great sport community and grow. And the only way we can do that is with people who want to start new teams and new players that want to get into the sport, even if they're not, hyper competitive national level. I'll throw it over to you, Megan, for anything that I may have missed.
You got it. I think we're good.
Awesome. I think that in your response, you talked about the benefit that teams that are not competing in USQs competitively can also have with joining in. One core group of teams that will not face a lot of the collegiate or club competition is actually youth teams at the high school level. If I'm a student or a gym teacher, let's say in New York City, how would I start a team? And I want to throw this one over to Lexi.
Yeah, so I think the first big part is reaching out to our youth department. We have a ton of resources that they can use. Also, if you're a student, finding a teacher or even maybe a parent who really wants to help start the team. We are currently working on, if you are a teacher, some coaching resources to be a better Quidditch coach. And we are also working on PE curriculum too, that will help, boost it for administrators to want to be a part of it.
Awesome. Really great to hear about that. There actually used to be a high school team near me called the Hunter Hawks, which was at a high school. That's the lower version of the college that I went to. So just a little fact about me. Another question that I wanted to ask was, how could USQ support someone trying to scout and get younger players into the sport? The person that asked this was speaking as a club player going into college, but I also think there's something important for club teams that are in areas without college teams. How would you recommend that they try to be role models and bring more people into the sport? I'm so sorry. I didn't throw this to anyone. I think, Megan, we can start with you and then Rihanna, or if anyone else wants to join in. And I just throw it to everyone as well, because although we're volunteers serving on this panel right now, many of us are also members of the playing community. And I think that we are all really advocates for the sport. So Megan, we'll start with you, and then we can linger off into other people on the panel.
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost, just getting your name out there. Even if there aren't any universities nearby, I think, being able to like cast that net like a little bit wider to any universities that may be even just several hours within you. Because, after they graduate, they may not be planning to stay where their university is. And, maybe a draw for them to where your club team is could be you, or they could be considering moving there already. So building those relationships early on, I think is really helpful, not only for your own recruitment purposes, but also I think it's just great to be able to give back to the Quidditch community, and especially at the collegiate level, because those are the next generation of athletes in our community that can just help continue to grow the sport. So engaging them is important. I think additionally, being able to look at, what are some meetup groups in your community? What are, groups that maybe, are helping people that might be new, or, looking to get to know other people? Like, what are those groups? And being able to introduce yourselves and let people know that your team is an outlet for, not only, a competitive athletic type opportunity, but also a social opportunity. I will also mention on USQ's website, there are recruitment and retention resources available on there with a ton of different ideas that you might be able to draw from. And the final thing I'll plug is your regional coordinator. Again, is a really great resource. So, as you think about what are the next steps for recruitment on your team, that is a really great person or group of people, if you have more than one RC in your region, to connect with and get conversation going.
I know personally that we also have some members in our community that also volunteer with USQ, like Quincy Hildreth, for instance, who's done a lot of work to bring Quidditch and make it more expounding in Atlanta, which does not really have collegiate teams that are currently very active and official. Jared, did you want to talk a little bit about how this works in Utah?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I said, did you want to talk a little bit about how this works in Utah? I know that there's something like that happening over there.
No, back it up, the whole question.
the question about what people can do to advocate and bring Quidditch into an area if there's not really enough happening based on the population there, if we want to be spreading and expanding it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I'm not personally based in Utah. I'm currently in Boston on the East Coast. I did used to be in the Western region, but maybe I could pop that over to another volunteer.
That's okay. I can take that one because I know, again, like Megan talked about, RCs really help out here in the West. We have both Alexia and Shirley Lou who are helping out a lot. And they actually have been working in tandem a little bit with Utah State and some of the alumni there to make sure that when things and events are happening, that it is broadcasted to people in the community. I know that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to think back to what the world was like before COVID, but I'm excited to see what people are able to re-advocate about when things do open up, because hopefully there are a lot of people who are ready and willing to come back into Quidditch.
And Utah University is the reigning Western Regional champion, and we're going to be going back there for nationals in a year, so something to look forward to.
Are they still the reigning champions after the spring 2020 West Regionals? They're not.
This is why I'm in a different region now.
Rihanna, I see that you have your hand raised, so I can throw it over to you. And hi, Jared Shane.
Thanks. I wanted to piggyback off of both Jared and Megan's answer and possibly throw it over to Lexi a little bit as well for kind of building those feeder chains, to use kind of a public school analogy. I think even if you're starting up a new club team and you're trying to recruit college players, and you have universities near you, what I've seen both as, you know, a player and as a volunteer staff, is if your club team can get involved with a college team, you know, Texas Cavalry coaches UT State, you know, down in the South where I am, Carnage coaches UCF, and that way there's a feeder chain that builds up there. And just get it, especially when club teams are so separate a lot of times. You know, I know Terminus is in Atlanta, but if I remember correctly, they come in from all over. Past club teams have done so as well. But I'm going to throw it over to Lexi to see if she has to get her thoughts on recruiting high school kids.
Yeah, no, I think college and high school relationships are essential for college recruiting. So I think if colleges, once they get to a point where they can do more outreach, I think working with high schools is key for that continued recruiting and retention.
Awesome. I do just want to add on that another thing that we need to be thinking about as we try to recruit younger players and things like that is the relationships that we have, the boundaries that we're setting, and also the DI values that USQ finds really important. I know that being older, which we find many of our club players are older, and interacting with players who are younger, we do all come to the sport in an equal way, but we do still want to think about the important values, how we can be inclusive, how we can be equitable when we do so. So the next question I actually want to throw to Michael. There's been a lot of conversation around film and media and how to make our events more accessible to those who are not attending in person. So what are you hoping to bring to USQ events in the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for a lot of those asks is quality and consistency. So I want us to be able to see more footage, which helps out with scouting, which helps out with people enjoying the game when they can't get to events. But in addition to that, on the actual live events, I'm hoping to expand what we can broadcast and what we can do for Quidditch. Like I know right now we're helping out with virtual events for the Among Us tournament, which is going to be fun and exciting, and just continuing to provide more opportunities for the community to get together. In a video capacity, I'm really excited for.
Awesome. I do see that we have 2 questions in the chat. The first one I will throw to Megan, and it's, what is USQ doing, if anything, to differentiate from the Harry Potter fandom, specifically J.K. Rowling, while still keeping the integrity of the sport?
Yeah, I think it can kind of be simply put as, we're using our voice. We're using the platform that we have, and we're vocalizing the fact that USQ has always stood for inclusion for everyone. And we want to continue to make sure that Quidditch is a safe place for everyone, including our trans teammates. Just speaking to JK Rowling and the transphobic remarks that she has made. Because of this, we have recently come out against two bills that the state of Utah was considering, House Bill 302 and House Bill 92, and we're always continuing to look for steps forward in this regard, in the work that our diversity, equity, and inclusion team are doing, and, just across the organization as well. It's not just on that team to be doing the work, but it is on all of our departments, and it's on our whole Quidditch community to be doing that work. And so that is something that we will always push, and we will not budge on that value that we carry.
Thank you for that, Megan. I do want to keep moving forward in the Q&A. So the next one, I'm guessing, is for Michael. Since it starts, Michael mentioned quality in the footage. What is USQ's base setup expected for streaming at a regional championship in 2021 to 2022? Obviously, provided that we're all back to return to play guideline.
So on a very technical level, I don't have an answer yet in terms of what equipment we'll be using. But for my goal, it's just set a standard of when you watch a game, you can tell who's on the field, you can see the plays, there's a consistency in the quality of the commentating, of the camera work, and that nothing is missed for a technical reason. And on top of that, we can build elements to make the breaks in between gameplay a little more interesting. But to start, I want to make Quidditch more watchable, no more handheld iPhones, and more footage nationally, as opposed to specific regions who have the depth of dedicated personal volunteers is the wrong word, but people who have been stepping up. Yeah, and that's a bit it. Regionals and nationals are the first milestone in like reaching that standardization of quality across the nation.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Jeremy, do you want to add a little bit here? I feel like there's room to talk about any other ways that we might be trying to make regionals accessible to people who can't go, especially other players who are across region, who have tournaments at the same time, or are preparing for other regionals at the same time.
Thanks. Yeah, so definitely live streams, major way that we're looking into this. We are looking into other ways to make scores accessible. We've been exploring in previous events a tweeting score system, so you can follow just how the tweets are going with different scores. You can actually get tweet notifications sent via text if you're interested in that, as well as some more gameplay specific ways. So I'll hand it over to Phantom to talk about our new scorecard stats tracking system.
Yeah, one thing that we know is that players have been increasingly interested in tracking stats like individual scores, but also like assists and beating and all of that. And like, obviously other sports leagues do this. It can hugely benefit our league. So one thing we've been working on is a new scorecard that will make it easier to track those sorts of things. I know that at a lot of tournaments, when it's your first time keeping score, it can seem really intimidating. So that's another thing that we want to make sure that we put out and give people information on how to do, because if teams can consistently keep track of this, then it'll benefit the community, and it'll be easier to find out what happens at those games that we weren't able to film. We'll get a lot more detail from just the written record.
Awesome. I think that you hit on another key touch point that's really important here, which is how are we going to develop people to be ready to perform when they come back out on pitch? And I know that there has been some conversation, especially from the international community around their leagues, and I want to throw it to ours. How are we working to make sure that our officials, when they do come back to games, are really ready to officiate at the level that we want? So for this one, I'll throw it to Miles first and then follow up with Jared.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of like those kinds of development, one of the things that we're really focusing on is making sure that we have cross-team collaboration and understanding. So, like for example, Ref Team is working hand in hand with the rules team to make sure that all the rules, whether new or old or anything like that, the referees have. Ref Team can put together any kind of help or sheets or anything like that to kind of really help referees understand how those rules are supposed to be called, and especially with all these new rules that were supposed to come out for this past year, obviously, and with the lack of play for this past year, we really want to make sure that we're providing everything that we can to ensure that. So that's one of the biggest things that we're going to be doing as far as Ref Team is making sure that we're providing those documents and things like that. So we're currently working on some one sheets and some one pagers and some other things to really kind of give some more of that guidance in terms of those kinds of common missed rules or common things that a ref would need to know.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, there's some bleed over between Ref Team and Snitch Team. I know we're both updating our tests going into the new year to reflect the updated rules, trying to make that more clear for both new and returning officials and snitches. Something else that Snitch Team is doing is we're working directly with Michael and the live stream team to create a series of instructional videos for tips and tricks for snitches at the beginner, advanced, and intermediate levels to improve their level of play and answer any of their questions. And then moving into the live season, we're going to be hosting virtual like workshops and webinars ahead of major tournaments because we know that there's usually an influx of new snitches that attend those tournaments. And we want to make sure that they're prepared and confident and are ready for safe play when they potentially snitch their first big game.
Yeah, I just want to highlight, I think that's the first time I've heard blood talked about in a positive way in Quidditch. But Megan, I see that your hand is raised. Was there anything you wanted to add on to this question?
Yeah, in terms of development, I kind of want to pivot it and also just mention the work going on for leadership development and athlete development as well. Those are two newer teams within USQ. Feedback that we've gotten, from the community is they want more resources in this area from USQ to help them be, the best coach, best captain, you're just simply the best athlete that they can be. And so our new leadership development team, which is led by Fiona Weishart, is the group that brought you the fundraising USQ Plus program earlier in the year. And their goal is to produce more programs like that, as well as more resources to help make sure that those in leadership positions feel like they have all the tools and resources necessary. So that's something to look forward to for this new season. Additionally, athlete development, brand new team, and that is a team we are looking to build and grow. So, if anyone does have interest in that team, you'll have a lot of flexibility to be able to work on new initiatives there. Feel free to send me an email if you're interested, which I'll plug that in the chat.
Thanks. We do have another question in our Q&A, and I'll want to throw this to Jeremy. There are so many volunteer opportunities in Quidditch. Why should I volunteer for USQ and not another league?
That's a really great question. Thank you to whoever asked that. So I'm going to tackle this from two perspectives and then hand it off to some of our other team leads. From a overall USQ perspective, USQ serves a very interesting role within the community. Within the United States, we create the rules, we create the base policies, we serve basically every Quidditch player in the United States. There are many other NGBs and other leagues that have a really amazing role. MLQ, who we've partnered with to put on QuidCon, has a really fantastic role within the space of Quidditch. You should totally consider volunteering for them as well. But if you're looking for the ability to impact Quidditch on a large scale and not on a niche scale, which both have very valid uses, USQ is going to be your better bet for that, as well as community outreach. We are a nonprofit sports league. We do try to focus on our values and engagement. If one of the things that drew you into Quidditch was the gender rule or how we handle different event locations, or you're just really curious about the way that our sport has an impact in the general community, USQ is going to be your better bet. So impact is going to be that general answer. From the events perspective, we currently don't have many volunteers in the events department. This is likely because we haven't had an event in almost 2 years now. And if you're trying to consider how we make regional successful, how we make national successful, this requires a lot of prep and planning by volunteers like myself and like yourself. And you want to ensure that events are running smoothly. You want to ensure that even if you're not playing, you're able to have a successful event that is running on time, is safe, is secure, is equitable. USQ is going to be your best bet. But that's the events perspective. So I'm going to hand it over to Rihanna to talk a little bit about membership.
Thanks. Part of why you should volunteer for USQ and not another league is mainly what Jeremy mentioned. We're the largest league in the US, especially if you're based in the US in the college system or high school system or anything that requires volunteer hours. Just from a base, I need to collect hours perspective, USQ is really great. You don't, majority of the time, especially now when we don't have events, you don't have to go anywhere. You can do it all from your home. But also from a personal perspective from me as member relations, I can no longer play. So I wanted to, support this sport I love with my whole heart. So looking into volunteer opportunities there and on that perspective was really good for me. So if you're someone who can no longer play, or you're just a huge fan of the sport and you don't want to play, which is also fair, USQ is a great way to contribute to the sport as a whole. And to do it that way, I think it's really great for that. And then I think Christian has some thoughts at this point.
Yeah, before I go, I'm going to throw it over to Megan. I see her hand raised.
Yeah, just a quick additional note, addition to the passion that you may have for the sport or giving back aspect that might be of interest to you. Another great thing about volunteering with USQ are some new perks that we added. One of which is, if you do volunteer a minimum number of hours that are set, you're able to get a free USQ membership for the following season or free merchandise, whichever one you opt into. So it's a great way if you are someone who, is looking to give time rather than money to the organization in order to get your membership. This is a great way to be able to do that.
Awesome. I just wanted to say that I don't think that we need to think of it as volunteering for USQ and not another league. Obviously I work many different hats in the Quidditch community, but I think that there is a joy to volunteering and knowing that a sport that you take part in, whether that's on the pitch with a broom in your hand or making sure that that happens for someone else, right? There's a lot of joy that goes into that. There's a lot of fulfillment that goes into that. So it really matters about why is volunteering important to you in any capacity in life. And I think that USQ, MLQ, IQA, or any of the other leagues internationally can all just give you a chance to work on something that benefits not just you, but other people. We are running shorter in time, but I do believe that we answered everything in the Q&A. I do just want to highlight again that USQ is a lot closer than it feels like, whether through your RC, whether through emailing or reaching out to the volunteers in the org. If we don't know the answer, we'll connect you to someone who does. And we're just as hopeful that Quidditch comes back soon as you are.
If you do have any more questions for USQ that you didn't get a chance to ask today, you can email any of us at our first.lastname@usquidditch.org. You can also email any of the emails that have been plugged in the chat, or just info@usquidditch.org, and we'll make sure that it gets forwarded to the appropriate party. We also have the QuidCon Slack channel. It seems like most of you join that. please join that. We will be checking it throughout the weekend, and we'll be answering your questions in that forum. We can see some more emails are coming in, like gameplay@usquidditch.org. Like mentioned before, we do have US Quidditch Cup 13 from home coming up. That's the Among Us tournament. You can get a free jersey from VII, discounts for everyone that plays. So please consider signing up. It's going to be a really fun community engagement activity for USQ memberships and other stuff. Again, if you have any questions, please let us know. And thanks everyone for coming. We really look forward to seeing you all in person again. Have a great day. Bye.